aspects will come into picture. So one of the major difficulty students face or researchers face is which will be my dependent variable and what will be my independent variable, right? Just imagine a scenario like one uh, kind of retail outlet or a bank want to understand how a customer like chooses a fixed deposit product or how a customer chooses a, let's say, insurance product, right? So the choice of a customer, whether a customer is choosing certain product, let's say insurance, or whether a bank or even FMCG product, right? So that choice becomes the dependent variable. Independent is whatever factors, whatever variables are affecting or are in relationship with that dependent variable. If I'm making a choice that every time I go to a store and I particularly buy certain, let's say Amul Taja or let's say your Milky Moo, certain kind of milk product, is there are different factors which might be influencing my behavior of choosing that product. So my dependent variable is that my choice, right? Then independent variable, what are those independent variables? So whenever you get a topic, most of the times it will be in the form of, okay, to understand the customer adoption of let's say this mobile banking. So customer adoption, how do like customer use mobile banking or let's say online payment system or let's say uh, this your different kind of educational apps, let's say Baiju, Lido, if you are like carrying out or undergoing an internship there. So you have to understand that, okay, if there are 5 or 6 educational apps, what are the factors, what are the variables customer consider before deciding, okay, I'll go with this Baiju or Lido or Vedantu, whatever different educational apps are there, right? So the dependent variable, the choice that is already given in your project objective. The difficulty part is understanding what are the independent variables. Because if you see, there can be hundreds of independent variables, but you cannot go and carry out a study for hundred of variables. You cannot collect data of that many variables. I cannot go and collect data, gender, age, income, then behavior, how many children, how much they spend in education. Like that, if I start putting down my number of variables, it will be a huge list, right? I do not have time, or I do not have money, I do not have effort to put to collect that much information, and that is where actually your qualitative research helps. So before, and that's why discussing in the beginning, right? Before you start collecting data, right, you should be very clear that why you are collecting that data. Every question in your questionnaire, right, should be relevant for your research objective. If let's say you do not have any research objective related to gender, you need not have to ask a question about gender. If there is no research objective related to your income group, you need not have to ask that question, right? Do not just like kind of follow a template, okay, your seniors or somebody has used that kind of questionnaire and I'll use that. Be very clear that what is my project objective, what are my research objective, then how to do that, right? So 2 years back when COVID started, I started collecting data about this hand washing behavior in college students, right? Because there were a lot of information, a lot of commercials from government were coming that how many times you have to wash hands, how many seconds, at least minimum number of seconds, minimum amount of time you have to spend in kind of washing your hands, right? So let's say that is my project objective, research project, to understand the hand washing behavior in college student in times of, that is obviously now it is no longer recent, 2 years back when I did that in 2019, right? So now the question is, what will be my research objective? Overall, this is my project topic. Then you have to divide into several. So again, if you ask me how many number of research objective, that completely depends upon you. It can be as simple as 2 to 3, or it can be as max as 10, right? More than 10, it will be very difficult. So keep within 3 to 10. It is up to you how many research objectives, right? So for creating that research objective, you have to go through certain secondary research, study about that. Let's say if you just put this article on Google, already people have done that research. Even not, if they have not done research, they would have written some blogs, articles, right? Read that. So that will give you an idea that, okay, this is something which is interesting to me, which I should understand, right? Let's say you are doing it for a company, right? Let's say this same question, if I change it to understand the purchase behavior of this let's say milk products. Let's say whatever milk, butter, curd, whatever the milk items being sold in the market, you want to understand how people select that, right? So then with the company manager whom you are reporting, talk with that. Okay, what are the challenges the company is facing? What are the things company will like to know, right? Because those kind of things, not necessarily all the like information will be available on internet, right? So have a discussion with your whoever is your corporate mentor, the manager whom you are reporting. If he or she doesn't have time to for you to discuss that, at least discuss with your faculty mentor. Sir, I want to, or madam, I want to carry out this kind of research. Which are the like some of the research objectives I can look into, right? You can discuss with your like seniors, like let's say if you know somebody who was working in that industry, talk with that person, right? What are the challenges they face? But the point is, research objective should be something recent, relevant for the company which you are working for, right? And this is somewhere most of the students fail. They just, okay, somebody gives them a project or they create a project and start creating a questionnaire. Do not do that. So basically, when I say project objective and research objective, I'm breaking down my project objective into several sub-project objectives. Some of the objectives on which I'm going to collect data, right? So in my particular case, I wanted to understand whether there is a gender-wise difference in hand washing behavior, whether there is a income group-wise difference in hand washing behavior, right? Whether there is a relationship between age and hand washing behavior, right? And how did I know that? Because when I put this topic in the internet, right? So these were the blogs and articles I read, understood that okay, these are the some areas people who are interest will be interested to know whether there is a difference or whether there is a relationship, right? So most of the times your research objectives will be framed in that way to find certain relationship or to compare, to find a difference, right? If you see all these research objectives are framed in that way, whether there is a difference in gender, in hand washing behavior, gender wise, income group wise, or whether there is a relationship, right? So first step is to divide or break your project objective, whichever topic you are conducting a project, carrying out a project, divide into subtopics, sub research objectives, right? Then once you have identified, okay, these are the 5 or 7, again, that is up to you how many research objectives, there is no minimum or maximum criteria. But remember that as and when your research objectives increase, number of questions also will increase, and nobody want to answer. If you go and carry out a survey, even if I give you a survey, none of you will, most of you will not answer it properly, right? And that is something you have to keep your mind if you are conducting this kind of studies, right? So keep it limited, keep limited number of questions. Next step is once I have research objectives, find out for each research objective what kind of information I'm looking into. If I look into my first research objective, whether male and females differ in their hand washing behavior, what are my variables? One variable is I want to understand about the gender of the respondent because if I do not know, then I cannot conduct that analysis. Second is hand washing behavior, and that I have to define. When I say hand washing behavior, whether it is per day, per week, per month, how am I going to define it? So average number of times someone washes their hands per day. So that is something I have to. So if you see, please specify the average number of times in a day you washed your hands in last weeks. Per day, how many times you are washing your hand? So that is one variable. So how am I collecting information on hand washing behavior? I'm asking respondents how many times they wash their hand per day, right? On an average basis. Obviously, it is not that every day they are equal number of times they will wash their hand, but on an average, how many times they wash their hand. So for my research objective 1, I have 2 variables. Similarly, for my research objective 2, I want to understand whether there is a difference in hand washing behavior between different income groups. So income group becomes one variable. Then hand washing behavior already I have counted, right? So I have not highlighted that. So like this, for each of your research objectives, write down what are my variables, right? Then once you identify that, okay, these are the information I want to collect, then go on and create questions. Now the problem is how you frame the question. What is your age, right? I can ask in 2 different ways. Which age group you belong to? Less than 20, 20 to 40, above 40? That can be one question. Or I can directly ask, please mention your age in completed number of years. So in that case it will be a ratio scale. If I'm asking in a, please like mention which age group you belong to, less than 20, 22, 40, above 40. Which kind of scale that will be? If the questionnaire question is, please mention which age group you belong to. Less than 20 years old, 20 to 40 years old, above 40 years old. Which kind of scale that is? Nominal, ordinal, interval, or ratio?
Sir, interval.
So why do you say it is interval, not ratio?
Sir, because we are giving a age gap between, sir, like less than 80 or 20 to 40. So we are giving the highest and lowest point of a particular data.
Yeah, but that is not the definition of interval, right? Interval scale is if I can measure the difference between two respondents. If I say somebody who has marked less than 20-year-old, somebody who has marked above 20-year-old, 20 to 40, can I measure the difference between two respondents? Can I say that,
No,
okay,
sir.
the age, right? So if not, it is not interval, right? It is ordinal. I can only say that, okay, this person is older than the other person, but I cannot say that by how much. What is the age difference, right? It will be ordinal scale. And that is somewhere, if you remember, we discussed a lot in what kind of scale, because unless you have the idea about what kind of scale you are using, you will face difficulty in the next step. So if you go, and I have shared one PDF document, if you open this, what kind of data analysis method is utilized depends upon how I have collected data, or the variables what I'm collecting data, which format they have. Categorical means nominal, ordinal. Metric or continuous means interval or ratio scale. Unless I'm clear that how am I collecting data, I will not be able to know that carry out a proper data analysis. Most of the times, like I said, people or the students collect data, then realize that, okay, they will not be able to carry out this kind of hypothesis testing or this kind of test, right? And most often the difficulty happens in regression, right? Just imagine a scenario, right? You are kind of like hired by as intern in SBI, and SBI want to understand like the average amount of money people transact per week using these UPI payment methods, right? Either Paytm, Google Pay, Phone Pay, whatever other these online payment methods are there. On an average, how much money they transact, right? Either receive or send within a week, right? And you want to understand that amount of money through regression, right? You want to predict that amount of money through regression. So, and the other variables are their income group, their profession, their location, whether how many credit cards they have. All those variables are their independent variables. Your dependent variables is how much amount of money they are going to spend online, right? Carrying out these online transactions per week, right? Like I mentioned, I can ask that question in two different types. I can ask that, please mention on an average per week how much you spend or how much transactions happen online. Less than 1,000 rupees, 1,000 to 3,000 rupees, above 3,000 rupees, right? Or I can directly ask, please mention in rupees how much money you transact online in a week. Whatever amount of money they have to write, either 1,800, 600, 2,500, whatever amount of money they are spending, they have to just write like that. In the first scenario, when I'm asking that, okay, which income, how much amount of money you spend, and I'm giving them categorical choices, at least the regression which you have used, you will not be able to use that. In my case, dependent variable has to be metric. That means interval or ratio. That means I have to ask the question in such a way that they're mentioning that direct number. I'm not giving them options to a categorical variable. Because once I frame my question that, okay, please mention which, how much amount you spend, and you that respondent has to choose among those three options, then that whatever information I'm getting, that will be a categorical variable, categorical data, because I only will know whether they spend less than 1,000 or 1,000 to 3,000 or above 3,000. That is a categorical data. So once I have a categorical data as a dependent variable, because I want to understand the amount of money they spend, that is the dependent variable. If I want to understand that, then I will not be able to use the regression. It is not that there are no other method. but at least the regression which you know, which you have used in Qt, you will not be able to use that. There are advanced complex method which you can use, but again, you might not have software for that. So that is where most of the times you will face the challenge. You'll jump into framing a question and then you'll realize that, okay, I do not have the proper data to collect this kind of data analysis. I'll give you another example. If you see here, relationship, I want to find a relationship between two variables, right? So I have one question. If I go back to my research objective, question number 7 is whether there is a relationship between age and number of times people wash their hands in a day, right? How I have asked that question? I have asked age. If I go back to my question, I have asked one variable, what is your age? That is in a ratio scale. Directly, person is mentioning their age, right? Then I am asking, please specify the average number of times in a day. That also they have to mention a number, 5, 6, 10, whatever the number they have to mention, right? In both the cases, I am getting a continuous data, metric data, right? So if I go back to this table and see that, okay, I have two variables, bivariate means two variables. One variable is age, right? What is their age? What is the age of that respondent? Second variable is number of times that person on an average per day washes their hand, right? So that is also a metric variable, continuous variable. That is also a number, right? So now what happens? If my dependent, what is my dependent variable? Hand washing behavior, right? So I believe that obviously other way around it cannot happen. Depending upon hand washing behavior, your age cannot change, right? You change your hand washing behavior, there will be a change in age. That is not possible, right? So it is other way around. Depending upon your age, maybe if you are a older person, you might be a little bit more scared about COVID and you will be washing your hand, right? Maybe little obsession will happen that every time you are going every 1 hour and washing your hand. If you are a little bit younger, you know that, okay, you might not get COVID. You will be little relaxed and washing your hand less number of days. Still, you will be washing your hands, but less number of times, right? So that is my assumption. And I want to find whether there is a relationship, right, between age and number of times a person is washing their hand, right? And I have asked that question in both in ratio scale. Please mention your age in completed number of years. Please mention your number of times on an average you are washing your hand, right? So in that case, both are metric. I can use a correlation, Pearson's correlation. But let's say I have asked in a categorical data. Please mention which age group you belong to. Less than 20, 20 to 40, above 40. That is a ordinal scale. That is a categorical data. Nominal and ordinal both are categorical data. Similarly, independent, which is independent is age. I have asked that, okay, which age group you belong to. That is a categorical data. Dependent is your hand washing behavior. That also, let's say I have asked in a categorical information that, okay, please mention which how many times on an average per day you wash your hand. Less than 5 times, 5 to 10 times, above 10 times. That also, let's say I have collected in categorical, right? Then if both are categorical, then I will be using cross tabulation. Still, I'm trying to find the relationship, but that time I have to use cross tabulation. But the problem happens, one data you have collected in continuous and other data you have collected in categorical. Then the problem will happen. Right? It is not that there are no methods, but again, you have to use certain data transformations and then only you will be able to use that. Right? And most of the times you will face this kind of issue unless you have before you launch your questions, before you release your questionnaire, you should have a clarity that, okay, for each question, what kind of data I'm going to get. So take ideal the good method is to take some pilot information, collect some 10 or 20 data points, see that whether you are able to carry out the data analysis with that data point. Then only you'll realize the problem. I have not asked the question properly. Right? It will take some practice, but that is something, and this document will help you. So for both for your exam, both for your internship, or wherever you are going to use it. So you have to be careful that, okay, how many variables I have in my our research objective. What I'm trying to find out. Most of the times research objective will be in this format, whether relationship, dependency, comparison between two groups, comparison more than two groups, right? Then find out what kind of variable, what is your dependent variable, what is your independent variable, and accordingly these kind of tests can be carried out. Again, I'm not telling these are the only tests. There are hundreds of tests. right? But with our limited expertise, these are the tests which you are going to use, right? So it is not that you cannot do or you cannot use other tests. There are hundreds or thousands of different tests. Again, if you find time, learn that, you can obviously use that. But at least for this course, what we are understanding, these are the limited tests. At least we are able to use, right? Only additional step difference between your exam or project what I'm going to give or in your internship. In the exam, you will have the research objective, right? Project objective data points has been given. So you have to identify what is that data point, what kind of variables has been given. Then use this PDF document to find out, okay, what kind of, because I'm not going to ask you in an exam, okay, please run regression for this kind of data. Please run ANOVA for this kind of data. That is what you have to find out step by step. And I am only interested in that part. If I give you a data points, some information, some research objective, are you able to find out what kind of data analysis method will be utilized? Because the next part, anyhow, you can use Excel. You have already covered that in QT. I'm going to repeat that also. That anyhow, if you spend 10 minutes in YouTube, that you can learn. But I'm much more focused in, given a data set, are you able to understand which kind of data analysis method will be utilized? And if you follow these steps, first find out how many variables, then what you are trying to find out, what is that problem statement given, whether it is asking you to find relationship, dependency, or comparison. Then check that what are your variables, and most of the times you'll face difficulty in here. What is my dependent variable, what is my independent variable, and what form of data set they are, whether metric or non-metric or categorical. These you are able to practice, understand each, and that is where the scale part is very much important. If I give you a question and you are not able to identify whether it is ordinal scale, interval, or ratio scale, then you will not able to, because if you are identifying a interval scale as ordinal or vice versa, then your data analysis method itself will be wrong. And that's why I told that part is very much important to understand how that question has been asked and how to know that, okay, what kind of scale is that. Because once you understand this part is known, already this method is written here, then Excel, I'll show you how to do it. Most of the Excel has been covered in other classes. So that won't be trouble part. Trouble part will be this, understanding how many variables you have, understanding what is the criteria or what we want to find out, then understanding data set or the data type. These step you are able to practice and understand. Then the next step, calculation in Excel, it will take maybe 5 minutes maximum. This step will take few times or few minutes. You have to understand what kind of data has been given, right? Any questions, any doubt? I'm not going to discuss one by one today because urgent when we are going a data analysis method, we'll come back to this table. We'll go through that. Today we are going to discuss the first one, univariate one sample t-test, right? Next class we'll discuss the two sample t-test, right? So again, each time we're discussing this, we'll come back to this document, see that what kind of data set we have and how to go step by step.